What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso, back with our final, it's kind of sad, our final Monday AM coffee of the offseason. Maybe not sad, because that means football is truly here. It's game week. I'm going to use the time today to talk Jets-Bills. It's week one. It's time to talk about a matchup and why Jet fans should be optimistic about that week one matchup. So, look, in season, a lot of our post-game reactions is going to kind of overlap with what Monday AM coffee has been. There'll be some iteration of it that we keep cranking along, but this has been a fun new series to get rolling this offseason. And as I said, once we get in season, a lot of this is going to be more so post-game reaction, but we will have one next Monday morning, which will be day of kickoff. But for your Labor Day, I'm going to do about 10 to 15 minutes on Jets-Bills. Before I dive in, I want to shout out and remind everyone, 25% off any order, Chitty's Cheesesteaks, using promo code Badlands. It's football season. It's time to start eating like it's football season. So check out Chitty's Cheesesteaks, where you will find the best cheesesteaks from this side of Philly. They use the freshest ingredients, including bread chips straight from Philadelphia. Chitty's offers good mood food for the whole family, including fresh hand-cut fries, empanadas, tacos, salads, and much more. With something for everyone in your family, from the pickiest to the most adventurous of eaters, you'll be sure to find something to make your mouth water. Save the trip to Philly and visit Chitty's Cheesesteaks at one of their multiple locations across Long Island and Queens, including in City Field. Find them online at chittyscheesesteaks.com and on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook using the handle at Chitty's Steaks. We got an in-season party tailgate coming in collaboration with Chitty's and Profit Exchange, so we'll have more information on soon. All right, let's talk Buffalo. Current favorite to win the AFC East, as they should be. They've pretty much owned the division in recent years. A team that was kind of considered, in some circles, a Super Bowl favorite last year, so was disappointing last year because they got wiped in their own building by the Bengals in the playoffs. As we know, the Jets were able to split with them last season, despite starting Zach Wilson in one game and Mike White in the other game. This is a fascinating week one opener for the Jets. Beyond, 9/11, Monday night, Rodgers' debut, this is the team that they are trying to catch to win the AFC East, and that is your path to getting a home playoff game. You have to win the division. And that road goes through Buffalo. So you have a chance to do what you did last year and beat them in your old building. So let's do a quick little refresh on Buffalo's depth chart. Starting receivers, still Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. Davis didn't quite make that leap that I think everyone thought he was going to make last year after what he did in that Kansas City game. Diggs, when he's right, one of the best receivers in the NFL. They'll be playing Trent Sherfield, it appears, mostly in the slot. Khalil Shakir, a backup receiver. It's Diggs and Davis are really the two receivers that you're going to see the football thrown to on the outside the most. At tight end, Dawson Knox, a huge part of their passing game. Dalton Kincaid, very hyped draft pick. Those guys will be very involved in the passing game. And Knox hurt the Jets last year in Buffalo in the game that the Jets lost to them. So, I think when you're, kind of going through it in your head, who are their top pass catchers, Diggs, Knox, Kincaid, Davis, are the four guys who I think are going to be the biggest target hogs. Running back, James Cook, Dalvin's brother, came out really strong last year and, will be heavily in the mix. They got Damian Harris from New England, quality player, when healthy. I think a little bit more of a focus to try to run the ball a bit more. Offensive line, Deion Dawkins at left tackle, Connor McGovern, the other Connor McGovern at left guard. Mitch Morse is still their center. He's been there for a bit now. They have Spencer Brown at right tackle. They have Osiris Torrance at right guard. So some questions on that offensive line. There's not a lot of names that jump off where you're like, like they're really loaded up there. Like it's an okay unit, but I think the Jets defensive line should be able to wreak some havoc on Josh Allen, who struggled heavily against the Jets defense and Robert Saleh last year. 2 games against the Jets, even in the win, 16 of 27, 147 yards, and 1 touchdown. A game that the Jets lost 20-12, and keep in mind that the Jets effectively shut out Buffalo in that first half until the last drive when Mosley jumped off sides. Allen could not even get over 150 yards passing in that one. He did rush for 47 yards and a touchdown, so he always has that ability to hurt you with his legs. He's a freak. He's athletically, he does things in the field that quarterbacks should not be able to do. When the Jets beat them at MetLife, Allen 18 of 34, a little over 200 yards, 2 interceptions, one to Jordan Whitehead early in the game, one to Sauce Gardner. He ran, again, for a couple touchdowns in that game. Really, Allen struggled to throw the ball against the Jets, but ran the ball relatively effectively against them last year. 3 rushing touchdowns over 2 games, but could not throw the football as well. I am sure a point of emphasis for Robert Saleh is going to be, how do we slow down Josh Allen's running? How do we keep him contained? How do we set the edge? A lot of defenses go in with that plan against Allen, and he's good enough to find a way to make something out of nothing. He is special enough to do that. Now, you feel that Jermaine Johnson taking a bigger role, even if Lawson's not 100%. You still have McDonald. Now, in the mix at the edge, you have Bryce Huff, who had some big plays against Buffalo last year. Along with that Jets defensive line, you know the names: Quinnen Williams, Al Woods, John Franklin Myers, Quentin Jefferson. Can they keep Allen contained? Make Allen throw the ball to beat you. Make him throw on Sauce. Make him throw on DJ Reed. Make him throw on Michael Carter. Don't let him have the 30 or 40-yard touchdown run like he did last year. That's how Buffalo really won that game. Allen's legs ultimately were the difference ultimately. And if the Jets can force him to throw to beat them, you saw last year he'll throw them a few. And he threw a couple really ugly interceptions and a couple other near interceptions. Some ball security with the Jets chasing him down. The defense should be confident. They played really well against him last year, as well as any defense did. So, Jermaine Johnson, even though he was in a limited role, had that nice sack. It was his nicest moment from last year. We know what Huff did in closing out that game. Sauce has turned him over. They'll be confident going into this game. You look at Buffalo's defense, which, has been consistently good, but I wouldn't necessarily say has been elite. A lot of talent up front. Greg Rousseau and Oliver, fresh off a new contract. They have Leonard Floyd. We know we're not going to get Von Miller in this game. At linebacker, Matt Milano is one of the best in the league. They will have Trent Bernard rolling through along with him. Tremaine Edmonds, not here anymore. Trey White at corner, who struggled a little bit with Garrett Wilson last year. I'm going to be a fun matchup to watch. Hyde and Poyer, one of the best safety duos in the NFL, although they're getting up there a little bit in age. The rest of the secondary, it just doesn't, pop quite as much as it has in the past. And I am sure the Jets are going to try to be pretty aggressive in this one. And, it's a good defense. I don't think there's any question about it. They have difference makers at all 3 levels. They have a very strong safety duo who has an ability to force turnovers. White is still one of the better corners in the league. It's going to be interesting to see how aggressive Rodgers and team look to be, because the Jets were able to move the ball on Buffalo last year. If you look at what they did in the first game, they ran the ball down their throat to ice the game. That was like the one good James Robinson game the Jets got. Carter ran for almost 80 yards and a touchdown in that first matchup. The Jets didn't have Breece Hall or AVT in that game, and they still iced that game by really running the football down Buffalo's throat. And Wilson was productive in that game as well. Garrett Wilson was productive in that game, having almost 100 yards receiving on 8 catches. So I think they'll be looking to go, back to that Garrett Wilson well, because he was productive against that Buffalo secondary, and that was with Zach Wilson throwing the ball, and then with Mike White throwing the ball. In the other matchup, he was also able to be productive in like a bad weather game. He had 6 for 78 in Buffalo, and if you remember, that was like a December nasty. Mike White almost got up to 300 yards in that game, despite missing a chunk of it when his ribs were turned to sand. And even in that second game, that was Bam Knight's, had a solid effort in that game, had over 70 yards and a touchdown. Bam Knight couldn't even make the Jets roster this year. And, last December, the Jets, within one possession in Buffalo with Mike White injured, Zonovan Knight, were right there to potentially win that game. So now you have Rodgers, you have Breece Hall, you have Dalvin Cook, you have Lazard, you have Rucker will be playing a bigger role on offense. Connor and I talked about this a little bit last week. We'll talk about it more on War Room this week, which will be Tuesday night, and the pod, which will be Wednesday. And Dan will cover some of this as well as we get into the weekend. Because, of course, we'll have a post every day this week because it's game week, and we got our season preview guide dropping Thursday too, which is going to be a fun one. There's a lot of optimism in there, as I think there should be. But I think for this specific matchup, I think the Jets, they have a very good chance to win this game week one. I'm curious to see what the final line settles at. I think it's a pick 'em. Buffalo, has been a narrow favorite in most places most of the offseason. I'm sure there'll be a lot of money on the Jets. Jet fans are active and optimistic about the team right now. The Jets are a bit of a national team with Hard Knocks going on and how often they're in primetime. It's Rodgers' first game. It's the only game on Monday. There'll be a ton of eyes on this one. Really making this a pick'em feels about right to me. Usually you get the 3-point swing for home field. It's fair to say, until proven otherwise, Buffalo's 3 points better than the Jets. This feels like a game where both teams are in the low to mid-20s. There wasn't a ton of scoring between these teams last year. 20-12. And the Jets scored on a block punt with a safety in that game. That was Jermaine Johnson as well. And the other one, they won 20-17. So 37 total points and 32 total points. I am sure the over will be a popular pick in this one. Let's see how high it runs up to. Would not be shocked if this game found its way to an under again. These teams, despite the changes, the Jets defense knows Allen well. Buffalo did play against Green Bay last year, just like the Jets did. So they're not going to be wholly unfamiliar with Rodgers and some of the stuff he does offensively. It has the feel of a 24-20, 24-17, 21-17, 21-16 type game where I could see them barely getting to a combined 40 points. I don't necessarily think there's going to be offensive fireworks. It's the first week of the year, too, right? There's going to be some sloppiness that's worked out and teams feeling each other out. Even if I go back to that, way back to that Jets opener against the Bills in 2019, where Allen had 3 turnovers in the first half and then got his feet under him and he led the comeback against the Jets. Week one, there tends to be a little of that feeling out. So I'm kind of, I will change my mind on this maybe, because we're gonna record 7 other things between this and kickoff. For now, it feels like Jets winning a close game that is more under than over, but we'll see. I like the matchup for the Jets. I think they match up pretty well with Buffalo. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm convinced as of today that the Jets are better than Buffalo. I just think, based on what I saw last year, I like how the Jets defense plays against Allen. I like that the Jets have them at home. I think I might be singing a different tune if this game was in Buffalo to start the season. That's a bit of a different beast. But the Jets will have, that semblance of a home field advantage. The stadium should be as raucous as I think we've seen it in a very long time. There really hasn't been a big game for the Jets at MetLife. It's been a while. I mean, you could say the Jets-Pats game in the middle of the year last year was that, but there was a lot of that skepticism with Zach Wilson. This is going to be a different beast and a different decibel level. So get there early and show up. But it's not the worst time to be catching Buffalo. It's a talented team. It's a well-coached team. McDermott's a good coach. It'll be year 2 for Dorsey as their offensive coordinator. There'll be some more comfort that comes with that. And Allen is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. These are one of those few games where the Jets may be at a quarterback disadvantage. There's only going to be a few of them on the schedule where you could say, the Jets might not have the best quarterback in this game. Coming off of last year, you would have to give that nod to Allen. We'll see what this year brings, but there's only a small handful of times we're going to say that. When they're playing Mahomes, maybe when they're playing Hurts, but not when they're playing New England, not when they're playing Miami, not when they're playing Dallas, not when they're playing Denver, not when they're playing the Giants, not when they're playing Atlanta, Washington, Houston. The list goes on, as everyone knows here. There's only a small handful of guys, and Allen's in that bucket, but he did not look like the normal Josh Allen against Saleh's defense last year. So it's going to be a fun week of hyping this up. It's great to have football back. Thursday night will be fun with Chiefs and Lions. We'll be all over it on the feed on Badlands, so make sure you're following along at patreon.com/BadlandsTOJ. There'll be something every day up through kickoff, and then Connor and I will likely have our initial reaction first thing in the morning Tuesday, because I'm going to probably go to the game. Connor's got to do SNY after, so instead of us releasing it at 1 in the morning, we'll probably release it at 8 or 9 in the morning the next day. So thank you everyone for listening. Enjoy your Labor Day, and let's celebrate football season officially being back.